something in the NFL that people just don't recognize and they don't want to recognize it. And I think it's worth it for us to actually show something here. So, what am I talking about? Who are the two most clutch quarterbacks right now in the NFL? Obviously, everybody's going to say, well, it's got to be Patrick Mahomes. It's got to be whomever else that they want to pick out of there, John. Is it Josh Allen? Well, here's something that I think people should actually think about a little bit. And I've heard a lot of negativity on both these two names. One of them, Kirk Cousins. Since 2015, so basically we're going back, we're looking at about a 9 or 10 years worth of football, right? Depending on how you want to look at it this year. He's had 6 go-ahead touchdowns in either the final minute of regulation or of overtime. Now, that says to me that you're a clutch player. You know who else is pretty clutch? Derek Carr. Derek Carr actually has 8 different instances where he's done the same thing, John. And right now this year, let's see, Derek Carr seems to be doing pretty damn good down there in New Orleans. Their scoring has got to be leading the NFL right now. And Kirk Cousins, all he did was go last night. Now, this is a guy who's coming off an Achilles, right? He went up last night to Philadelphia, kind of lit him up. He drove him downfield, and they got him an opportunity, and they won the football game, last minute of the game. In a minute and 5 seconds, he went basically 70 yards, John, against a defense that most people consider to be one of the best defenses in football. Then you look over at Derek Carr and you go, look, this guy is 77% right now in his completions. He's got 5 touchdowns. He's got 1 interception. I would say that a lot of people really don't understand football if they really don't understand how clutch these two guys are when it matters. And it's one thing to just go down the field, and all the rest of it. But when there's just a couple minutes left on the clock, that's when it's time to be clutch, and that's when these two guys step up.
Well, Pete, Derek Carr, who I'll start with him, like you said, he's averaging 221 yards a game. 5 touchdowns is what he's thrown so far this year, 3 in the first game, 2 in the second. And his QB rating, Pete, QBR, 142. So there's a lot of fantasy players that wish they had that guy. Kevin O'Connell, by the way, Pete, the quarterback, the offensive coordinator, I think, up there in
head coach.
Minnesota.
Yeah.
He has got Sam Darnold looking like he should be the second pick in the draft because that guy, all he did was throw a 97-yarder to Justin Jefferson. That was amazing. He's deep in his own end zone, Pete, when he threw that ball. And obviously Justin did a lot with his legs, but he just ran right by those San Francisco D-backs. That was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And like I say, as far as Derek Carr, they've scored 40-plus points in both games, Pete. So it's not just Dallas that suffered under Derek Carr, and suffer they did at home. But how about this, Pete? Just lighten it up. I thought that was fantastic, and I think Derek Carr finally might be at the team that he needed, Pete.
Yeah, no, it's a great start so far. It's really early, and Sam Darnold, you have to give him a lot of credit, and the coach has done a great job. Everybody calls him the quarterback whisperer, and so far so good. It's early, so we shouldn't jump the gun too much. And I will say this: San Francisco is a great football team, but they had so many players that were sitting out, John, because of contracts and so forth. I don't think they looked like they were in football shape. Those guys had their hands on their hips. They were tired, and that was in the first quarter. That was in the first series practically. So
right.
They have some issues going on in San Francisco. They will be great, but they're not great right now because they're not in football shape. All right, so we're only 2 weeks in. What's the best-looking team right now, do you think, in the NFL, John? I'll throw mine out. I think it's Buffalo. And the reason I say that is it's not so much the competition, although it kind of is, but their first game was against Arizona. Now, a lot of people would say, well, Pete, Arizona's really not all that great. Keep an eye on that Arizona offense this year. I mean, they got Harrison Jr. on the outside. He's a big, athletic receiver who barely got the ball early on. But this past week had a great week, and Arizona looks like they can light it up right now. That offense is pretty impressive. But Buffalo beat them. Then Buffalo went on the road to Miami, and they beat Miami. Now, they lost the quarterback, but they didn't lose him right away or anything. But they lost the quarterback, obviously the concussion thing, and prayers are out to the quarterback, Tua. But I'll tell you, Buffalo looks good on offense. Buffalo looks good on defense. I think Buffalo right now is probably the best team in the NFL. And I say that, John, because just yesterday we were talking about that division out there in the AFC. Baltimore is 0-2. That's not such a great start. I mean, there are some problems going on out there. Cincinnati is 0-2. They've got some problems, and both of them have different defensive problems. One can't stop the run, the other can't stop the pass. So until they get that figured out, Buffalo's looking pretty damn good right now to me.
Well, I'll say this, Pete. The Saints, best team.
Yep.
And the reason I will say that and stick by it at least for a while here, Pete, is not just Derek Carr, it's the defense.
Yeah.
I mean, last year, Dak Prescott, the reason he got that big contract this year was because last year he threw 36 touchdown passes. I mean, you know, if you look at the stats, he led the league in touchdowns. The team looked great until the playoffs, which Dallas always sucks these days in the playoffs. But, and Skip Bayless hates it, and Stephen A. loves giving him crap about it, Pete. Just lit him up, of course. But they've got 2 touchdowns, Pete. 2. Mm-hmm. And the Saints look like a defense. If you can shut down a team with as many weapons as Dallas quite obviously has, and you shut them down to, what was it, Pete? Was it 19 points? Was it 40-19 or something like that? Yeah. For God's sake, that defense deserves a lot of credit. 19 should be enough if your defense is stout for you to win a football game. Now, I know in the NFL, it's an offensive-minded deal. Everything favors the offense. I get it. But scoring 19 ain't the worst thing in the world. But that defense was able to keep Prescott and the Cowboys on their back feet, not on their front foot. And I think that's going to be a difference maker. And by the way, you got to play in the dome. You got to play in the Mercedes Dome or whoever's got their name on it now. I think it's the Caesars Dome, Pete. I think it's Caesars Gambling Dome. But that gets loud. And this game was not played there. So look for these guys to light it up when they're playing at home, too.
And when you point out that defense, John, they still got Cameron Jordan, Steve Jordan's son, who's been unbelievable. Berkeley kid, pretty damn smart guy on top of everything else. I mean, they got Demario Davis. He's a linebacker that people don't know well enough because he's one of the best linebackers in all of football. Fred Warner's number 1. This guy's somewhere floating around near number 2. And then they've got Tyrann Mathieu as well. So they've got a lot of different players, a lot of different positions. And the Honey Badger is always going to be difficult. You look at that New Orleans team, you start saying, wow, where's the weakness? They got a good offensive line. They got a great running back, a quarterback who can't get stopped right now, and a bunch of young receivers. I would say that right now they're looking at a pretty good spot, and that's your NFC team. I got your AFC team. There's the Super Bowl right there, 2 weeks in. It's way too early, guys. It's way too early.
Well, remember, it's not an option. When you're gambling on football, it's not an option to miss Pete on his show Sundays from 11 till 1 Eastern time. We always put a link to it, and it's a great – by the way, Pete went 9 out of 10 against the spread, right, Pete?
I did, yep, last week in college football.
9 out of 10. So if you're a gambler, we might have to start featuring that here, Pete, on the Thursday program. Since that's the last one of the week, we might have to, and you could feed it into Sunday Night Football too.
Yeah, maybe
Thursday night. Sorry.
Maybe I submit it to the people watching. I submit what the 10 picks are.
There you go. Well, we appreciate all of you tuning in, folks. Thank you. We hope you join us again tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Pete and I will be back. See you then.